everybody, and welcome back to WCCA TV Tech Safe, episode 39. We are so grateful to our hosts here in the studio, Adam, our wonderful producer. And today I am just so excited to bring to you a colleague from Ireland by the name of Allan Brennan, and he is an IT specialist who figured out that we perhaps are not living according to the law on what we're doing with today's wireless technology, and especially in our children's schools. So, Allan, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us from Ireland.
Thank you, Cece. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background, and then how did you come to know that there are biological effects to today's wireless tech?
Okay, well, so my background is in tech and telecoms. I've founded two wireless companies. Before I got involved in wireless, I worked in the obviously the IT industry, in networking industry. I worked in banking, security, manufacturing. It was always in an IT from an IT perspective with data networks. So, and then I got involved in community wireless networking in around sort of 2001, 2002. At that time, I was an SAP consultant professionally, just kind of as a hobby, got into the whole wireless thing. Because you're working for 10 years with cable networks, and then all of a sudden, wireless Ethernet comes along. So it's like, whoa, what's this going to do? So in 2002, at that time I was living in an apartment complex, and there was 300 apartments. 333 apartments, and I had been a technical manager in ESAP BT and set up the first e-commerce system in Ireland. And so all I wanted to do was, the idea was to give everybody really, really fast broadband for half the price that you'd normally pay. Mm-hmm. So I set up Wi-Fi projects in 2003. Started on the installation in this apartment complex in the center of Dublin, and in 2004 we launched it, and it was fantastic. It was the fastest residential broadband in Ireland at the time. It was less than half the price of a regular broadband, and there was no caps. There was no data caps, so you could download as much as you wanted. So back then I thought Wi-Fi was safe, and so if you fast forward, so that was sort of 2004. A year later, I got the first European license to introduce millimeter wave technology using sort of 70 to 80 gigs. That took about 2.5 years to go through with the regulator. And then in 2017, I'm kind of jumping forward a bit now, but in 2017, I got a phone call. My son he had a headache, he was crying, he wasn't well. That was at around 10 o'clock in the morning. So that happened 3 times during October 2017, and the only thing that had happened was that a Wi-Fi network had gone into the school, and as it happened, I was the treasurer on the Parents Association, and we were told that there'd been an anonymous donation. The AGM happened in September. We were told there was an anonymous donation had been given to a church collection for the school, and that this anonymous donation was going to be used to install a Wi-Fi network. And everybody was standing in the school, and everyone was clapping. Yeah, we're going to have, we got this anonymous donation, and we're going to install a Wi-Fi network. Turns out there was no anonymous donation. So the people at the AGM had been misled. There was never an anonymous donation. And what happened was the school ended up, there were 500 children in the school. There was a total of 28 laptops, and what they used to do was they'd put them into this thing called a laptop caddy, and they'd wheel around the caddy, and they'd wheel it into 5th class, so they're 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds. They'd wheel it, bring it into the 5th and 6th class on Thursdays and Fridays for an hour or two, so they could use laptops for an hour. There's only 28 laptops. And the system that they installed in the school, they put an access point in every single classroom, and the system was capable of supporting more than 6,000 laptops.
Oh my goodness.
So unfortunately, my son sat up the front of the class, so his head was closest to the closer to the access point than most other children. And so he was being blasted with chronic levels of wireless radiation. So that's what had him. Now, the first time I went to collect him, I didn't know this. The first time I went to collect him, I'm like, I said, what's wrong? And when I brought him home, he was kind of shaking and he'd gone red. And so I brought him home, and within about 1 to 2 hours of being home, everything disappeared. There was no headaches. He wasn't shaking anymore. And I was thinking, that's really odd. And I started asking questions about the Wi-Fi network. I said, send me the technical details of what's been installed in the classrooms in the school. And the school wouldn't send me any of the technical details. And I was thinking, what's going on here? Because I could sit here looking at technical details all day, because I don't understand them, where the school didn't understand them. So they wouldn't send me the technical details. What happened was I ended up having to report to school, to the Health and Safety Authority, and to the communications regulator. Thankfully, I also went and met the school chairman of the board in November, and he agreed to turn the power down to its lowest level. Now, when that happened, I also had, contacted the school. And I said, look, I want my son moved from the front of the class to the back of the class, so he'll be furthest away from. And at that time, I didn't want to really believe that Wi-Fi could do so much damage, because I've been promoting Wi-Fi. There's videos of me walking around Dublin, telling people that, to lock down their networks and Wi-Fi is safe and all the rest, going back to 2004. So, but over the months then, when I between sort of October and December of 2017, once I started entering technical terms that, say, most people probably wouldn't enter when I was doing my search, all of a sudden I came across loads of research, and it was just like opening Pandora's box, because all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is way worse than anybody's ever been told. I haven't been told about the auditory effect limit. I haven't been told about, the children, when they came home, there were kind of 6 symptoms that they had between them. Like my daughter used to complain of, she used to get nosebleeds in school. Mm-hmm. My son didn't get the nosebleeds. He got more kind of the headaches and the kind of the shakes. She also had a sore stomach. Mm-hmm. So the 6 conditions that they used to complain of were, headaches, nosebleed, and then a skin rash. Over the Christmas period of 2017, he had a skin rash during December, and we didn't know what it was. I mean, we brought him to the chemist and everything else. We hadn't a clue what had happened to him. And while he was at home over the Christmas holidays, the skin rash went away. All of the other 6 symptoms, the other 5 symptoms, they all go away within sort of 1 to 2 hours. But the skin rash took about 2 weeks. And
Allan, our Zoom glitched for a second there. Can you just repeat the 6 symptoms?
Headaches.
Yep.
Earaches.
Okay.
Sore eyes. Mm-hmm. Sore stomach. Mm-hmm. Nosebleeds and skin rash.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the headaches and the nosebleeds and the earaches and the sore stomach, they all go within 1 to 2 hours. So once the children are home, the 2 hours later, they're fine. Now, the thing about it is, especially with both parents, in a household where both parents are working, parents on a normal, you come home, it's 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, sit down, child turns around and says, I had a headache in school today. You don't think anything of it. Child might even say, I had a nosebleed in school today. You wouldn't think anything of it, or a sore stomach. The last thing people think is, oh, I wonder if it's the Wi-Fi box in their classroom. They'll never think that.
No. And in fact, when we bring it up, I have a neighbor who's a lovely man in my neighborhood, and he's an attorney, and LinkedIn had suggested becoming friends, so I just clicked that button, and he wrote back and said, well, I don't want to be associated with you on LinkedIn from a professional standpoint, and honestly, I don't really believe in what you're saying. And he said, before I became an attorney, I was an engineer. And so I tried to send him some information. I tried to send him the New Hampshire Commission report that shows that these engineers and others did the investigation and found this radiation be extraordinarily harmful. Anybody who wants to look at the New Hampshire Commission report is welcome to go to Massachusetts for Safe Technology. And if you scroll down on our state efforts page, you'll find this where we talk about legislation. But it falls on deaf ears.
So, well, here's the thing. So people who work in the wireless, because obviously, I worked in the wireless industry. I mean, I was I think it was 2006, I was my contribution and promotion of the Irish wireless industry. Because back in, so it was called the Invisible Access Service, the service for residential apartment complexes. And the average signal strength that customers got was sort of between 60 and 80. Like, we won't get too much into the tech now, but it was the optimum level to receive, the capacity that they required. But what's happened today is the levels are too high. The levels are far, far, far too high. The access points, the Wi-Fi access points have increased in power by orders of magnitude, and they've got closer to people. So this means the exposure has gone through the roof. And when it comes to, when it comes to the wireless industry and the guys, the engineers, the men and women who work in the Irish wireless industry, they weren't told about auditory effect limits. I wasn't told about an auditory effect limit. I wasn't told about the workplace sensory effect limit. So Cisco, who, because for Buncombe County, Cisco obviously operate in the EU. So every single Cisco employee in every EU, workplace, so that's every Cisco office, they should all know about the sensory effect limits. And
tell us what sensory effect levels are, because here in the U.S., I don't think we have anything like that in our laws.
So, okay. So it really started in when it comes to being incorporated into guidelines, it really started in 1998. With ICNIRP, the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. I mean, it should be really non-ionizing radiation promotion rather than protection, because they don't protect.
Yeah, they are quite industry influenced over there in ICNIRP.
They broke the law. So they're a German-based non-profit organization. So that means they're bound by German law, which is EU law, EU directives, and so the was in directive, the 2013 directive, which was transposed into German law in 2016. 4 years later, ICNIRP in 2020 during lockdown, ICNIRP published new guidelines, and these new guidelines effectively allowed for higher radiation levels, and they omitted the sensory effect limit. So they took out what's a legal requirement for every workplace. They took that out of their guidelines. So they've breached German law. So they're The only good thing about it is it's so blatant now. The engineer guy who doesn't want to connect with technology and Wi-Fi is safe, in time he's going to apologize to you, because he hasn't been told. That man wasn't told about auditory effect limits. He wasn't told about workplace sensory effect limits, and they started off in 1998. So in 1998, in the ICNIRP guidelines, on page 506, I think it is, it talks about the fact that people with normal hearing, so not people who are electrosensitive, people with normal hearing, report microwave hearing effects when they're exposed to pulse radiation levels in excess of, I don't want to get into all the tech, but basically that people with normal hearing will get things like, the clicking in the ear, kind of tinnitus type thing. If they're exposed to levels of Wi-Fi radiation that's too high. An example where Wi-Fi radiation will be too high and in breach of an auditory effect limit will be, say, Liberty Global, their Wi-Fi cable modems. The American. So if you have if you have a Wi-Fi cable modem TV and you can see the access point, like let's say you're less than 2 meters away from it, at that distance you will be exposed to levels of radiation that exceed the auditory effect limit. So if you're sitting there wondering why you're getting ringing in your ears, it's probably from the Wi-Fi. If you're so that's contained in 1998, and that's to do with, it's called auditory effect limit, but it's kind of misleading, because what it also says in the 1998 guidelines is it talks about damage that it does, pulse radiation does to the eyeball, to the retina. Like in 1973, there was a World Health Organization symposium in Warsaw, and they identified a guy called Dr. Zaret from the States, actually, from New York, I think. Said he identified three types of microwave cataracts: delayed, acute, subacute, and delayed. So that was in 1973. So 25 years later, they don't specifically reference signals are, they're bad for the eyes. So the auditory effect limit really should have been called the eye and ear limit or the sight and sound limit, because it's not just about auditory effects. Now, thankfully, 15 years later, in the EMF Safety Directive, the 2013 version,
and that's by the European Union.
That's by the EU Commission. So every EU member state transposed that international law in 2016. And the term auditory effect was done away with, and instead it's called a sensory effect, because we can sense these signals. Like, these are physical agents. These aren't, these are physical agents that are going through the air, and people are sensing it every day of the week and they don't realize it. Things like brain fog. That's a classic, that would be a classic symptom for Wi-Fi exposure. Another one will be like if you see kind of stars, like if you're too close, like let's just say you picked up your phone and you knocked on mobile hotspot. I mean, never ever do that. But if you did pick up your phone and hit mobile hotspot on your smartphone, would be enough that the official term, it's called phosphanes, PHOSPHENE, I think it is, or something like that. But it's basically you see stars. So
oh my
so
goodness.
so the engineer down the road wasn't told about it. I wasn't told about it. In 2004, we were the only company in Ireland. We only did wireless installations. We wouldn't do. If somebody rang up and said, "Listen, we want to get a network done, but it needs some cabling," I'd be like, "No, we'll do it. If it's wireless you want, we'll come in. We'll figure out a way to get it done wirelessly, but I'm not doing anything cable." And now it's kind of a complete bow turn. So now
I hear you. I travel with my little bag of tricks, and I show people it's not rocket science to fix. Plug back in your Ethernet cables and get adapters to the devices, and then you can have safe technology. But I had to do the same about face that you did, Alan, when I spent 8 years bringing technology into my kids' schools, doing all this fundraising because we didn't have the budget. And we became the first in the United States to even have a little sign with best practices for mobile devices, which is start these baby steps by turning things off when you're not using them, turn off the Wi-Fi when you're not using it, and we can just put switches on the wall with timers on it. This is really not rocket science to fix. But I want to tell you, when we got a new stove, it was radiating at 1,090,000 microwatts per square meter. And in the scientific literature in our indoor spaces, they want us to be at 10 microwatts or less. So here I'm up over 1 million on this new stove in my kitchen.
What kind of stove is it?
Oh, I don't know, smart something or other.
I'd be really interested because I'll check out the
So I went into the settings. I couldn't find any way to turn off the antennas. I went into the manual and it told me to stay, 20 centimeters away from that radiating thing, which is ridiculous on a stove. So I got a service gentleman to come in, and he'd never heard of any of this before. And he was a little grumpy with me when I wanted to show him how much radiation we were trying to get down to. But at the end of the day, he pulled off the back of my stove, and behind the motherboard, or behind the digital display, was the motherboard. And right next to the motherboard was this little tiny board. And all he had to do was unplug it, and that was the antenna. And then the levels completely dropped back down to the safe levels that I have established in my home. Same thing with my television set. I went round and round with the manufacturer to see if I could turn off the wireless, and there was no way to do it. So I picked up my giant TV, I hauled it in my car, and I took it down to the local tech guy, and he opened it up, and this is what the bad guy looks like. This is the wireless radiation antenna that was pulled out of my phone or out of my television. So it's not rocket science to fix this. And if we can urge manufacturers to at least give us all the option to turn these things off and maybe even
Yeah.
have them off as the default. And if you want to turn on an antenna, then turn on the one that you want, because as you know, our cell phones have multiple antennas put in all over here. Cellular and data, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, locator, hotspot. And for folks who didn't know any better and upgraded to 5G, there's additional antennas in there. And everyone is pulsing this radiation to make or maintain that handshake. And the message is not no tech, but for goodness sakes, as you said, let's get everybody on the same page so we at least know there are risks and how to mitigate for that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously on the smartphone thing, so any of the say the Apple products, the iPhones that have been made, say in the last year and a half, they would have typically between sort of 60 and 80 radios in them. So I would be steering clear like a million miles away from any of the iPhones.
Wow. So is that excessively increased number of radio antennas in there because of 5G? Is that the arrays of antennas
well,
that are in there?
well, they just put more radios in because they need more. They put more radios in for all of the various, spectrum bands, all the frequencies. So there's a lot more spectrum bands now with five. Like the fifth generation isn't just about sort of technology and just a couple of more little bits of wireless signals. There's a hell of a lot more. And also what it does is the fifth generation, it sort of integrates everything seamlessly. Now, from an operations point of view, that sounds great. It's like, oh, right, great. Everything's sort of integrated and I can, walk down the road, talk on my, or watch a video while I'm walking down the road. Not that I'd be doing that, but I can watch a video walking down the road, walk into the house. And when I walk into the house, the system will automatically switch from, say, the 4G signal outside onto my Wi-Fi network that's in the house. And when it's on the Wi-Fi network, it's now been offloaded onto the cable network. And because Wi-Fi offload, that function is a massive industry player. Like there's mobile operators love the idea of offloading onto Wi-Fi networks because it gets all the traffic off their network. So that's, you can see why the mobile guys like it from an operational point of view. But I generally try and leave my phone at home when I go out. And if I do bring my phone out, it's powered off.
Yeah, same
And,
here. Mine too. It's a glorified clock and a glorified camera. Yeah, and mine's an iPhone 7. And I only got this because the old Samsung 3 hand-me-down that I had from my husband, it was a 3G phone. And so they came in and took that bandwidth back to, I think, reincorporate it into what they were building out with 5G. So yeah, I really don't use a cell phone much at all. And folks don't even know. In your phone, there's a setting in the settings that says phone, and you can just forward your cell phone calls to a landline. So when you're not on the go, there's no reason to be sitting indoors radiating yourself from this.
Yeah.
And I do 2 free public education webinars every month. Anybody around the world is welcome to join us. And I just help people quickly connect the dots because some people get sick and it takes them years and years to figure out what happened to their health. So I do a 2-hour free webinar twice a month, and I just put up the invitation for our August webinars that we're calling Safer Tech Possibilities at School, because I am just horrified at the thought that we are about to start another school year with these children and their teachers and all the administrators and staff who are going to walk into these buildings with extremely excessive levels of microwave radiation. So I'm doing one on August 12th at noon Eastern time, and then another one August 29th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And anybody who wants to join us, go out to Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and you will be able to just click through and register. And if the times don't work for you, then by all means register, and we record all of our talks, and then we will send you that plus my slides. Because I tell people, don't take our word on any of this. But you've never been given the opportunity to even know that there is very serious, credible science behind all of this. So if I can tee that up for you to start your own investigation, then by all means, go ahead and jump in and do what you think is right as a person, as a parent, as a community member, to protect yourself and everybody around you. So, Allan, we're going to do a second episode here in just a couple of minutes, but
Okay.
I want to wrap this one up. If you can share with us what happened to your kids in their schools.
Oh, so the power was turned down to the lowest. Well, they said the power was turned down to the lowest level. Um, I double checked that. I was able to. The school turned into kind of a prison nearly. There was locked out. Like they all of a sudden, the school board, they didn't want parents calling to the school. A few months later, and my kind of benchmark was the children. Like, are you getting a headache? And they weren't complaining of headaches anymore. But so they turned the system down to the lowest, and in my children's classrooms, they actually turned it off because when I contacted them, particularly want to do it, but you have to submit a formal complaint, and in the complaint, you have to provide technical details about the exposure levels you believe the children are being subjected to. And it was February 2018, and I remember working on those numbers, and I was horrified, because during the spring, like in February, and the primary schools over here, the schools have a break for a week, and it was during that week off that I had to figure out what the exposure levels were of the children, and they were off the charts.
And that was without the children even being in the building with their devices. That was just the infrastructure.
The thing about the school is the school had a no device policy. Children weren't allowed to have a device. See, at a school where there was no phones allowed in the school, which was brilliant, but then they come in and they install this rogue wireless network, that can support 6,000 laptops.
And you've got 28 in the grade level.
There's only 28 in the whole school.
Oh my God. So industry has once again oversold to unsuspecting schools and IT professionals. Well, we're going to wrap up this episode, Allan, but we're going to come back in just a few minutes, and we're going to do another episode where you can guide us through how to have these conversations with your school. What do the administrators need to know, and what do the IT folks need to know to be able to at least start getting to some sanity on this? And I'm so grateful to have you here from Ireland today. And we will be back with episode number 40 in just a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Okay.